Hello, and welcome to our Construction Market Trends webinar hosted by Skanska USA Building. I'm Katie Wilson, Senior Director of Business Planning and Strategy, and I have the pleasure of being your moderator today. Thank you all for joining us. We would love to know what markets and industries you work in, so please feel free to let us know in the chat. This webinar is meant to be accompanied by Skanska's quarterly market trends report that covers supply chain trends, material pricing, labor changes, and related construction indices. We'll put the link to the report in the chat, and please be sure to check it out after today's webinar if you haven't already. Today, we're going to explore how teams are working to meet market demand, given a shrinking construction labor pool. The latest September numbers show a slight rebound, with the industry adding 19,000 jobs. But during August, the industry lost 7,000 jobs. And on a year-over-year basis, it's only increased by 0.5%. Further, our trade workforce is aging, and there aren't enough people going into the trades to replace them, a problem compounded by recent changes in migration. Skanska is working on getting more people into the trades. We're engaging students to visit our sites and providing internship opportunities and partnering with subcontractors on apprentices programs. Additionally, we host a free multi-week construction management building blocks program tailored to our local trade partners. Yet data center construction is booming and billions of dollars in investment have been pledged into the US. So the question becomes, how can we deliver on this unprecedented demand? Today, we'll explore prefabrication and offsite manufacturing across 3 case studies: a modular central utility plant for a healthcare client in Florida, offsite manufacturing solutions, and a collaborative delivery method to realize prefabrication opportunities. But before we get into these case studies, we'll dive into the supply chain and materials overview from our quarterly market trends report. We have a lot of guests today with a lot of good content, so we've allotted an hour and 15 minutes just to make sure we cover everything. If at any point you have questions for our speakers, please add it to the chat. We're going to work the Q&A portion of today's webinar a bit differently, taking questions from you all at the end of each portion, not just at the end of the entire webinar. So please add your questions to the chat as we go, and be specific of who the question is for. If we can't answer your question in the time we have allotted, we'll be sure to follow up with you directly. Finally, know that we'll be sending this recording of the webinar and the materials to you all. With that, I'd like to ask Tom to introduce himself and dive into our supply chain and material update. Tom?
Thank you, Katie, and hello, everyone. My name is Tom Park. I lead Skanska's National Strategic Supply Chain team. First, I'd like to review where we stand with the current state of tariffs. So while this chart looks very similar to what we shared last quarter, there has been significant activity since our last webinar, starting with China, when they tightened nearly and halted all exports of rare earth metals in early October. The Trump administration immediately responded, announced an additional 100% tariff on all Chinese imports effective November 1st. Ultimately, President Trump and Xi Jinping met in South Korea on October 30th and announced a trade truce, which did avoid the 100% tariff and even reduced the China tariff by 10%. So as you can see here right now, China's tariffs are now ranging from 30 to 47% for most goods. In addition to this, the Trump administration announced new Section 232 tariff of 10% on all lumber imports, with only a few country exceptions. We'll talk more about that new tariff later. But he also announced some new country trade deals. For example, Switzerland tariffs were reduced from 39% to 15%. Our South Korea reduced tariffs from 25 to 15%. Japan also went down from 25 to 15%, which all is great news. Lastly, everyone is probably aware, we are waiting for a Supreme Court ruling on the legality of President Trump's reciprocal tariff policy. We are expecting that decision to come in early 2026. So with that, what do we expect on material and equipment going forward? I'll just start by saying generally, there's 2 major factors impacting prices and lead times across our 14 categories this year. And those are tariffs, of course, and demand by each specific category. So with continuing high data center demand that Katie talked about, we are in a likely a soft residential market. We do expect that dynamic to continue into 2026. So I'm going to quickly run through the categories. So starting with insulation, it was up 5 to 8% in 2025. However, lead times and price trends are expected to be relatively flat next year. Roofing is up 3 to 5%, with that trend continuing into next year as well. On HVAC, that was up 10 to 12% this year, depending on the manufacturer. However, we are seeing lead times come down in 2026 and continuing that trend, but we do expect a similar price increase in this category. Electrical gear is very similar to HVAC. That is going to be up 8 to 10% this year. We do expect that to continue as well, however, with possible improvements in lead times. With wood, the story here is weak residential demand. So in spite of the new tariffs on lumber, we are seeing minimal impact to lead time and prices, really until mortgage rates start to come down and we see residential demand recover. Residential, relative to that, relative to at least structural steel, we do see lead times and prices steadily increasing next year. And again, that's primarily due to steel tariffs and high demand from data center projects. On metal panels, we do see similar to structural, up 5 to 8%. That's actually being driven a lot by hot and cold rolled steel tariffs driving prices. Cement and concrete. This is a category that's really supplied mostly domestically and in the local markets. So we don't see major impacts from tariffs or even like national data center demands impacting that. They could be impacted by local, of course. On float glass, that is mostly a domestic supply. Actually, 94% of float glass is manufactured in the US. So we do see moderate price increases in 2026, which brings us to curtain wall. Aluminum tariffs are definitely driving this category with 10% price increases this year, and we also see those continuing into next year. The last few, electrical commodity, that is impacted a lot by metal and reciprocal country tariffs, as well as high demand. And we do see those price escalations continue. Lead times are flat and good. Metal studs, similar to metal panels, driven by hot and cold rolled tariffs, driving prices. And finally, drywall, really only a 1 to 2%. We're expecting that to continue. And again, primarily due to soft residential demand and minimal tariff impacts.
Thanks so much, Tom. It feels like the tariff uncertainty has calmed a bit, but we'll see how the Supreme Court rules, as you mentioned. And it's really interesting to hear how different market demands, like weak housing market, but a hot data center market, are driving supply chain escalation and lead times. We got a lot of questions from our audience as they registered about how should they be planning for escalation this next year. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely, Katie. So from a material and equipment perspective, we do still see 2025 tariffs, flowing through into 2026. It's only been less than, a full year of tariffs. And so we're still really seeing those tariffs move through the supply chain, right? A lot of inventory issues there. But additionally, strong data center demand. I mean, we definitely see that continuing, and that is driving HVAC equipment materials prices. But with respect to construction escalation, specifically to your question, I would point people to look at our composite cost index in our market trends report. In there, if you look, you'll see in aggregate, we do expect to see cost escalation in about the 4 to 5% range on a total construction for 2026. But yeah, we're definitely seeing the tariff impacts into that total construction in the single digit percentages next year.
Yeah, it's great to hear. So just a little bit over kind of our typical escalation of the 2 to 3 due to the inflation generally in the economy. So, okay.
Exactly.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Tom. I don't think I see any specific questions from the audience. Reminder just to send your questions in as we go. So we appreciate that, Tom. So now that we have an understanding of the supply chain and materials, let's dive into how teams are using prefabrication and offsite manufacturing to overcome challenges. Michael and Paul, welcome. Will you please introduce yourselves?
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Underwood. I'm a project executive with Skanska Building, and I am located in the Orlando, Florida market.
And yes, good. Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Thanks, Katie. Paul Kirchhoff. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer for Epsilon Industries. We design, build, and install modular prefabricated central utility plants for a wide variety of vertical markets, and we send these things all over North America.
Awesome. Thank you both for introducing yourselves. Michael, can you give us a quick overview of the project we're talking about today and explain the challenging labor market we faced?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Katie. So this is a new, exciting project for Orlando Health in Central Florida. It's a new regional hospital campus in Lakeland, Florida, which is, for those of you who don't know, Lakeland, Florida is basically situated roughly halfway in between Tampa and Orlando. It's a greenfield site. It's about 80 acres, consisting of a new hospital, bed tower, shop building, CEP. Again, it's a full-service hospital, so ED, ICU, med-surg rooms, lab, pharmacy, OR and imaging suites. It's the whole thing. So, and really one of the big challenges we knew we were going to face early on in this job was just the location in between two really busy markets. Both Tampa and Orlando both had so much construction going on, not only in the healthcare market, but also in markets like airports, the large the theme park work in Orlando. This had really been a big pull of the local trained workforce that we were used to using in these two markets. So due to those conditions, finding the right MEP contractors to take on a large hospital in between the two cities was always going to be a real big challenge. So we as a team knew that was going to be a big problem going into this project.
Thanks, Michael. I mean, seems like every day somebody is moving to Florida, so the population's really grown there. So it's no surprise the market's hot, especially with some of that aviation and theme park work. So how did our team overcome this challenge to deliver the project successfully?
Yeah, so like I said, we knew we were going to have problems getting the coverage from the right bidders on these large scopes, especially these large MEP scopes. So really worked together as the entire team to figure out how do we break this up across the project into smaller packages that really made sense. And the first thing that really came into everyone's mind was moving to this offsite fabrication solution that would shift some of that demand in the local labor market to different areas. So with prefabrication, we could still ensure the project schedule was met, the quality and the expectation for the client was met, but again, see that reduced local burden on the workforce to really look at shifting a lot of that burden that we wanted to focus on there on the site into the building with our local resources. So the team landed on this solution for the offsite CEP. We looked at doing a design assist procurement methodology and bringing on a partner early to really help early on in the project work through this together. And by doing so, we could shift 90% of that trade labor for the CUP offsite. So we began with the customer, the designers, procuring this portion of the work through a competitive process, and ultimately we chose Epsilon as our partner due to their experience with the large complex modular utility buildings and specifically with their experience with healthcare markets.
Yeah, what a great solution. And I love that we're able to focus the on-site labor in the actual hospital, which is very technical work. So what were the tangible impacts of this approach and what were the final benefits in terms of schedule, budget, and quality?
Yeah, so one of the great results from this was really getting the partners to the table early. So having Epsilon to the table in the early parts of pre-construction was critical. We worked on establishing those budgets together as a team. When you're looking at a large complex central utility building, obviously most of that budget's in that large equipment. So having Epsilon there in the very beginning to set those budgets, work with our pre-construction department, this is really a cost neutral solution or even a cost savings with having a team like Epsilon to really work on strategies to efficiently build these plants. But the biggest thing is we were able to establish those budgets early, and at the very end of the project, we did not have any move or change in that CEP budget. That was the biggest thing, is we knew cost certainty and schedule certainty going in. So it's hard to do an apples to apples comparison because again, they were involved so early in the project, but that was the biggest takeaway from us, was having all that certainty, not only with the budget, but also with the schedule. And I know Paul's going to talk about that a little bit more, but the biggest thing is to understand that you're now working with an offsite production schedule, not just an on-site project schedule. So that's what's great about having partners like that there early is those guys, and Paul's gonna talk about it, really drive solutions and solutions to get items released, because we've got to hit those offsite fabrication schedules to make sure that plant's being built in that fabrication window that we all plan for it to be built in. One of the big challenges on hospital is this concept of schedule drift. We're going to talk a little bit more, but again, having all of that equipment procured so early in the plant, a lot of those concerns that most projects are feeling right now with the big CEP gear, the big chillers, the big electrical switch gear, those types of things, we were able to release a lot of that super early in the project, and that was never a huge constraint for our project because of the ability to procure those big pieces of equipment so early. So that was another really big benefit, which is avoiding those big problems that we typically have on a project of this size with that big equipment. So that was another big solution that they brought to the table.
Yeah, if I could jump in, I think this is great. I mean, the talk about schedule is really interesting. We see this coming from a couple different directions that Mike spoke to here. I mean, a lot of times when we're looking at these projects with a team, the goal is like, hey, can we compress schedule? Like that's the goal. Like, we get it's speed to market, and there is actually an opportunity in modular construction to compress schedule if you can get like those overlapping schedules, right? If you can start, doing site work at the same time you're building things in a factory, now you get the opportunity for compression. But that's not the case all the time, right? Something else we've noticed though, and Mike mentioned this, it's this idea that we hear from a lot of clients, is this concept of schedule surety, right? Schedule surety, this idea of like, okay, you take what Mike, what you're saying, like 90% of the labor, you take it off of that CUP, you put it back into a factory, you eliminate all those variables, you're pre-testing it, you're pre-commissioning this thing before you ship it out to site. When it gets out there, the number of variables are exponentially less, and the thing is up and running much quicker. So de-risking the schedule around this can be a big benefit that has nothing to do with schedule compression, if you will, right?
No, there's a lot of great benefits here. That early release, getting that material done, and released early, and then that schedule surety, Paul, that you just talked about, takes the weather variables out of the equation. Lots of benefits there. Paul, this was obviously a very specific example of prefabrication for a large central utility plant. What about projects with a different scope or on a different scale? Can you provide examples of other prefabricated solutions?
Sure. So I think we have a slide for this, right? I mean, when we think of the kind of work that Epsilon does, we kind of break it down into 4 major categories. And there's all kinds of examples within these categories, but they're all really related to central utility systems that feed, a hospital or a medical center or manufacturing or data center, that kind of thing. One of the really important aspects to, prefab and modular for central utility plants is the importance of customization. All of these are customizable, right? None of this stuff is coming off of the shelf, and that's really important for a couple of reasons. When you think about modular prefab for central energy plants, I mean, one, you got to be able to accommodate owner preferences, right? Every owner's got they from an operational standpoint, they have certain equipment, certain controls they're looking for. So you got to keep your flexibility there because Trane versus JCI, chiller's a little different size, so it's important to be flexible on that front. And the other aspect from a customization standpoint is just like the site, right? I mean, like every site is different. So you got to be able to accommodate different, the footprint may be different. The height restrictions may be different. The project we're talking about here, the Lakewood job, normally we put the central utility, like the towers, right on top of the utility plant. But in this case, because there were some particular height restrictions for this site in this location, we actually worked with the team during the design assist process to kind of optimize the location. We actually shifted it over to the side so you can get the height down and meet the local requirements. So that's, again, this idea of customization within the confines of modular and prefab is super important. And that's why we tend to see these days, right? This is different than 10 years ago, but these days, for the most part, when a team is looking at doing a modular prefab utility plant, they're engaging a company like Epsilon using design assist. And this is what Michael was talking about earlier. I mean, this idea about grabbing a subject matter expert and having them work alongside the design team as they take that design from like a 30% to 100%, right? That's super important. That's how you ensure that, look, the CEP is going to meet all the design intent that is required that the EOR has established, but you're also doing it in a way that you can build it in a factory and you can ship it down the road. So these are the kind of key things to think about that the design assist approach really facilitates well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's very customizable, and the key is to get you engaged as early as possible to make sure to everything works together with that prefabricated components.
For sure.
Obviously a lot of flexibility here, but some customers may feel a little hesitant to do that early engagement because it forces them to make the decisions very early. Can you talk about how you address change orders and pivoted to meet the changing priorities on the project we're talking about today?
Yeah, I'll jump in first, Michael. You may have some things to add, but thinking like this idea of I mean, there's definitely there are changes on this job just like any job, particularly when you're involved in the design assist phase. This is a slide. What this shows here, this is the Lakeland project, the CEP, the conceptual model at about a 30% design, and it's just at a very high level. There's a lot of detail here, but at a very high level, the red bar on page left. That's the heating system. That's all the boilers, the hot water, the steam, and all the auxiliary systems and piping and whatnot. In the middle of the central plant, we had all envisioned that that's where the electrical gear is going to be. The normal power, emergency power, all the HTS gear, all that good stuff. So that was the original concept at 30%. Now, because we were involved during design assist, we worked very closely with Michael and his team and the design engineer. And it actually became obvious at one point, like for a variety of reasons, you know what? It actually makes sense for the electrical gear to be on the outside and the heating system to be in the middle. So as part of the design assist, it was relatively easy. I mean, well, my engineers might be like, well, that wasn't that easy, but it was pretty easy because it was at that early stage to be able to move those systems around. All the piping and the conduit was moved around. And that was done relatively simply, very transparently, and at no cost to the project because we were able to do it when it was all still in the model stage. The great thing about this process is when you've got one company, whether it's Epsilon or one of the other good companies that does this kind of work, if they're able to do this, you got one company responsible for all this. You're not coordinating with a whole bunch of different trades. You got one company that owns the BIM model, and our BIM model translates right into fabrication packages that we're then building on the factory floor. So it's all streamlined, a ton of transparency. Mike and his team were able to see what was going on throughout the whole process. And at the end of the day, there was no cost change as well, which was really nice.
Yeah, and I would just echo what Paul was saying is that was the importance of having that target value design, that TVD approach to this design assist process is all the time we're talking about these solutions, any moves, any shifts, any visual changes to the plant, those all come with a potential cost and schedule impact. So making sure that as a team, we're looking at that target value design and not going over it, but also incorporating these changes. At the same time, we have this very detailed production schedule as well as our on-site schedule that are married together. We're making sure these changes are made early enough so Paul and his teams could still maintain their off-site production schedule, but we were also monitoring that for the on-site schedule as well to make sure that plant rough in and everything else that we're doing on site, underground, foundations, those types of things, all of that information is available on time to keep the project moving on schedule. So yeah, it's great process.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Paul and Michael. I think having one company really seems to streamline the changes and really working together for that TBD approach. So I appreciate that. So what kind of solutions does Epsilon offer? How big can these solutions scale? And what other markets are you currently working in? Will this work outside of the healthcare market?
Yeah, good question. So I'll address the market question first. So in terms of markets, I mean, companies like ours, we tend to focus on clients and projects where there's a need for a complex central utility plant, right? So I mean, healthcare is a great example. Also, data centers, advanced manufacturing like pharmaceuticals, batteries, automotive process, that kind of thing. I would say from a market driver standpoint, I mean, in addition to just everyone's got to try to pull labor off the job. There's also this idea of schedule, the speed of market. We're talking about the compression or schedule surety. That tends to be the drivers that really move a project to try to do this, to do this, sort of modular approach to the utilities. So that's a market perspective. The other question you asked was about size, right? Like how big do these get? It's interesting. I mean, you can basically get as big as you want to get with these sort of things. I mean, it's interesting. In the last 5 or 10 years, the size of just chill water plants that the industry is looking for has gone up exponentially. It's kind of crazy. It's not uncommon for us to be looking at sites that need 50,000 tons, 100,000 tons or more. As you think about it, though, it's like there are some real issues with building a single 50,000 ton plant or a single 100,000 ton plant. The nice thing about the modular approach is it really lends itself to breaking down a large site load into some much more digestible and easily orchestrated approaches. I'll give you an example. Like this is a chill water plant that we built for a manufacturing client recently. It's 18,000 tons with a whole bunch of 1,500 ton water cooled chillers. Now this is a single 18,000 ton chill water plant. The site was actually a 70,000 ton load. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see this is the actual solution we came up with. During the design assist process, we sat down with everybody, and the implications of a single 70,000 ton plant became obvious. We said, why don't we do 4 identical 18,000 ton plants? And this actually worked out really well for a couple of main reasons. One, just from like an operational redundancy standpoint, the owner loved it. They're like, this is fantastic. I don't have 1 plant, I got 4 plants. They're all tied into the same system backfeeding. So it worked really well from a resiliency standpoint. So that was really good operationally speaking. But also from an installation standpoint, when you think about actually implementing a project like this, these 4 plants were shipped in phases, right? So the first 18,000 ton plant was on site, started up and operating way before a single 70,000 ton plant would have been running, right? So as the owner's getting their process equipment in parallel installed in the plant, they're trying to get this stuff started up. We're able to supply them with chill water and get those systems commissioned. And so you start thinking about, again, schedule surety and de-risking a job. That was a big win for the client and using this kind of approach.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. I really see a lot of opportunity here with the offsite manufacturing central utility plants for, the phase turnover, the speed to market, that schedule surety that you've talked about. So I really appreciate that. What is the most important thing for other customers to know about using similar solutions on their projects? What lessons learned can we share with our audience today?
I mean, I would say it's almost like a cliche, right? But call us early. Don't wait, right? I mean, we actually love engaging with project teams very early to start, scoping out what are we looking at from a footprint standpoint? What kind of budgets are we looking at? What's the schedule and the lead time look like on a plant of the kind that you're looking for? So engage us early. I mean, Michael and his team, they did that, and I think it worked very well. And I would also say just don't wait, because I mean, at this point, the demand for this sort of stuff is significant. We're already booking out into 28 for production capacity. So it behooves everyone to kind of engage companies like ours early.
Yeah, I would echo that, Katie. I mean, there's really not a too early. It's so important to have all your partners at the table when you're talking about these types of solutions, because to Paul's point, there's so many things to consider with the offsite fabrication schedule and when your plant can slot into their production timeline. Having your design team understand what deliverables are due when, so you can get that gain of that early procurement to get those big pieces of equipment early, so the project can see those benefits. So not waiting until DDs. Sometimes there's just not enough time to see all of that on fast-paced job, to see all that benefit that you can go to with a modular solution. So I agree with Paul. There's just there's never a too early. Get the team together early and start working on solutions together. That's my biggest takeaway.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Paul and Michael. Definitely, early engagement looks to capture the most benefits, and I think we're going to hear that a lot today. So,
Thanks, Katie.
Yeah, appreciate you all. I don't see any questions from the audience. Just a reminder that we're going to be taking questions as we go. So if you do have any questions for Paul and Michael, please add them into the chat. Unless there's one that came in. I don't think so, though. And yeah, with that, just add them to the chat if you have any questions. So we're now joined by Brian to hear about offsite manufacturing solutions. Rob, Brian, welcome. Do you want to start with introductions?
Sure. Hey, Katie, thanks for having me. Good day to everybody. My name is Brian Garver. I'm a senior manager of strategic accounts. I'm based in Cleveland, Ohio. I help to run our national data center construction team, and really grateful to be here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rob Collefson. I'm the Director of Engineering for Hilti on the East Coast. My team is responsible for the consultation, engineering, and sales of our technical portfolio, including software and services.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. Well, welcome both. Before we really dive in here, it'd be great to hear about what each of your companies are focusing on for offsite manufacturing. Rob, why don't we start with you? What does Hilti offer?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Most people tend to think of Hilti as a hardware or tools provider, but really we're much more than that. And we've seen an opportunity in recent years to address labor shortages and productivity challenges on job sites. And we're working to partner with our clients early in this design process, as you've heard throughout the webinar, really to streamline work and integrate into this project workflow. So a good example of this from our end is with our modular support systems you see on the screen. Here we can really support the full-scale feasibility analysis, engineering, BIM coordination, and modeling. And this would apply to applications like multi-trade racks, overhead grids, and other secondary steel structures, typically associated with data centers, pharmaceutical plants, and healthcare facilities. We've also made investments in our prefabrication capabilities. So we want to support the cutting and kitting and prefab for these modular supports. So we're able to stage delivery to fab shops and job sites to reduce installation efforts for our clients.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rob. Brian, do you want to give us an overview of Wesco?
Yeah, absolutely. Wesco is a Fortune 200 supply chain solutions provider. We have a core competency in distribution. So our 3 strategic business units are really focused on our key customers, both nationally and globally, providing them with material and service offerings. And that ranges from on the grid at the utility, all the way through power distribution into electrical rooms, through datacom and security integration. And so while the Wesco name is really synonymous with distribution, it's really behoove us to be more than a price and a part number. And so one of the key offerings as it relates to the subjects today, Wesco really focuses on offsite manufacturing and prefab services. So we can work with original equipment manufacturers as well as contractors to ensure that projects are coming in on time and under budget. Some examples of that could include like power distribution centers and e-house programs. You heard some of the CUP piece that Epsilon and Paul were talking about, and helping to feed some of those programs, medium voltage skids, PLC and control panels, switchboard assemblies, even power whips and finished good assemblies. So really excited to dive a little bit more into that.
Awesome. Thank you both for that overview. And it's great to hear how you're expanding into this prefabrication and offsite manufacturing realm. What are some of the main benefits of offsite manufacturing?
From our perspective, offsite manufacturing can really help to streamline the design process and really create supply chain resiliency with, especially when there's a repetitive bill of materials and that can be pre-provisioned. So having those materials delivered in a more consolidated fashion, or even through a vendor managed inventory program, can really help to reduce some of the unproductive labor that we see at job sites. And also, I love the term, we talk about mitigating risk a lot, but de-risking a project. So if we can look at ways to de-risk those projects and help with project timelines, it's important. Receiving that right material when it's needed in a more quality controlled environment really helps to impact job site safety as well.
And from our side, aside from the improved design coordination and overall quality control, the biggest impact we see is ability to plan for this demand and even reserve inventory for our projects and our clients, which is really important given the volatility in the global supply chain we've seen in recent years. This inventory reservation can help ensure project schedules through the on-time delivery. It also helps reduce, cost variances and change orders. And I think the added benefit in a year like this is we see the volatility around tariffs. So any upfront planning is extremely beneficial.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's really, helpful to mitigate those changes in the supply chain. I think we're hearing that, we heard that a little bit earlier today with Michael and Paul. So really kind of hearing some key themes here. Okay, so if I'm a customer with a project to build, how do I go about partnering with an offsite manufacturer like either of you? And what does that integration look like with you and the rest of my design team?
Well, it's obviously the theme of the day, and I don't know that I'm going to change it at all. And so that early engagement is really, really key. And we hear, hey, we want to swim upstream or we want to go farther left. And it's no different, like Rob mentioned, from a pre-provisioning standpoint, or even from being an extension of a design team. Supply chain partners like a Hilti or a Wesco can really help to offer advisory services. Like in our instance, a lot of times we're helping with specification standardization. And so that input really early in the design process can help eliminate and jump around any loopholes that might be in the supply chain. So that design feedback is really key. It can also help to reduce costs and avoid any installation or supply chain challenges.
And as you may have guessed, I couldn't agree with Wesco more and the other panelists on this webinar. The early engagement is key. Often with the multi-trade coordination and prefabrication, it's going to require upfront efforts with the general contractor and other stakeholders. So Hilti can be involved in early conceptual design and coordination with ownership groups, design teams, general contractors, and subs. And this will typically allow us to really provide full value engineering and better coordination with the trades. We also have resources that will provide support and coordination throughout the project lifecycle and all of the different phases of construction as well.
Yeah, definitely. So really similar themes here, as you both mentioned, getting engaged earlier, the earlier the better. So thank you for that. Brian, I know you integrate with data center customers. It seems like these projects are moving faster and faster and in more remote locations where it's easier to secure power. How does Wesco help these projects meet their goals?
Sure. You'll hear the data center boom get referenced in a multitude of different ways. We hear it called like the data center gold rush. And while Wesco isn't necessarily going after that gold, we're kind of the ones that are selling the picks and the axes and the shovels to go after it. We're well positioned to support and help that. But just a word on that boom as a whole, because you'll hear bubble being tossed about. But just alone, at least of what we have visibility to today through some of the trade services and other planning entities, there's over $1.5 trillion of planned and permitted construction that is going to be taking place from a data center perspective through 2030. There was 9 gigawatts that are going to be completed for construction this year, and over 24 gigawatts next year. So just that alone, if you think about from the perspective of a tripling of construction between 25 and 26, it's pretty incredible and unfathomable. That AI boom in West Texas, it's going to continue to expand into those remote markets, New Mexico, Wyoming, Wisconsin, Minnesota. So along with that, as we were prepping this conversation, we were having some internal, not debates, but just some conversation about it. One of the things that did come up was, well, how does that impact long lead time equipment on things like medium voltage switchgear? And so we see that happening, and that capacity for long lead time items and engineered to order items is really getting reserved to and conserved to go to some of those high demand projects. So being earlier is really important, but there's a trickle down effect to that too, and that some of these smaller projects and commercial projects and the like are impacted because the slots for capacity manufacturing are limited. So again, planning and procurement strategies earlier has never been more important. Thinking outside the box and leveraging a supply chain partner to lock in that capacity. And if you have to even store the material, if that's necessary, it's really becoming a key strategy. So on some of the larger projects, I just wanted to kind of go into depth a little bit more about where Wesco can really support the velocity of that deployment. We're positioning offsite manufacturing and prefab solutions really, really early in the project lifecycle. As well as even during construction, we're offering remote warehousing services, leveraging our buying power and operational scale to all of our customers within the mission critical ecosystem. So for example, we have a large hyperscale customer that's building across the US. Wesco's implemented a integrated supply chain program for all of their building management system panels that's installed in all of their greenfield builds. So by augmenting their offsite manufacturing, our capabilities with some of our third-party panel shops, Wesco can act as a logistics arm then. We store that material, we deliver these panels to site for just-in-time delivery, and that really in turn helps the data center end user with planning and also project deadlines. It really ensures a complex supply chain is managed by a singular partner versus multiple partners and multiple suppliers.
Yeah, thank you. Impressive. I mean, data centers are clearly an in-demand market, so that logistics arm to store material for just-in-time delivery is key. How is offsite manufacturing implemented in other market sectors and on smaller projects? And when does this offsite manufacturing make sense? Is there a size threshold?
Yeah, it's a great question, Katie. In addition to data centers, you heard Paul and myself reference pharmaceutical and healthcare projects being prime markets for these types of services. Again, the stakeholders, the higher application complexity and repeatability in these sectors makes partnering in the design process very beneficial. That said, we really don't see a specific dollar threshold that would apply. These services can be executed on lots of different project types, including high-rise, airports, government jobs, civil work. We've seen it vary from projects under $100 million to the really large-scale billion-dollar developments. And we're really just able to tailor to the specific needs of the client and the project. So depending on the productivity needs and the project requirements, we can come up with a good solution. An example of this, maybe on smaller scale commercial construction, would be tight mechanical rooms, underground spaces where we have crowded corridors. The need for upfront coordination and prefabrication is high just to deliver solutions on the job site that will reduce the schedule and the installation, for those specific projects. So varies across different project types, but we tend to adapt and support our clients when it's needed.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, not just labor constraints, but, tight spaces, lots of different scale here where the solution, could make a lot of sense. So thanks, Rob. Considering the ongoing strain in the construction labor market and the supply chain of you all have talked about, it seems like offsite manufacturing solutions will continue to play a large part in project workflows in the future. What is the future of these solutions, and what investments are manufacturers like Hilti and Wesco making to meet those demands?
Yep. So from a Hilti standpoint, we're really doubling down on the investment piece. So we have a strong plan to continue to invest in additional field and back office resources that support this integration into our client's workflow and the design aspect. And we will continue to invest in physical prefabrication facility space and the capabilities there to really support the growing number of projects that we see in the market. So it's important to scale up here because we do want to keep up with this growing demand of offsite manufacturing. And we want to make sure that we're a good partner to help alleviate some of these productivity challenges that we're seeing in the current market.
Yeah, ditto. We must have cameras that are spying into each other's boardrooms because, Wesco is also continuing to focus on purchasing and developing prefabrication space, especially supporting current customer need, but also that future need. One or two of the other areas that we're making investments in, really it's around the continuing development of software solutions that are leveraging the power and the scale of AI. So some of these platforms that we're seeing are really going to be able to provide a more predictable and accurate supply chain network for our customers. And really, in turn, that helps to fuel the continued growth of prefabrication and offsite manufacturing. And just lastly, the digital twin piece, as well as real-time IoT monitoring. You heard reference today, the BIM modeling. Any enhancement that we can make to a design to production workflow is really critical. That integration is really going to help to eventually ensure that there's accurate fitment, reduces rework, optimizes supply chain. So anything that we can do to really be more than just that price and a part number and a partner to all of our customers or anybody within the space is going to be critical.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much, Brian and Rob. Sounds like more space is needed for this growing market. And, I think there's a lot of key, with the AI and BIM and how we can kind of make this even more streamlined in the future. So we'll be looking for that and very interested in it. So thank you so much. And I still don't see any questions. And as a reminder, we're taking questions as we go. So if you have any questions for Rob or Brian, please add them to the chat and they'll respond to you. So thanks so much, Rob and Brian. We're now joined by Carolyn, Brian, and Josh, who will discuss how they successfully leverage prefabrication on a recent project. So welcome all. Do you want to start with introductions?
Sure. Thanks, Katie. And thank you so much, everyone that joined the webinar today. I'm Carolyn Jameson. I'm a project executive for Skanska, and I'm in the Boston office.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brian Delory. I'm Vice President of Planning and Pre-Construction for TG Gallagher. We're a large mechanical contractor in the Boston market.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joshua Mashad, principal here at BR Psych Consulting Engineers. We're design engineers for MEP, FP, IT services, and sustainability.
Awesome. Welcome all. Can you explain what we did on this project? What sort of challenges did we face, and how did prefabrication provide solutions to these problems?
Sure. I think I can speak for Brian and Josh. We've been working together closely for several years, and our firms were all very motivated to maximize any opportunities to prefabricate because it aligns with our values, which are protecting people, reducing waste, elevating quality, and enabling a more reliable and collaborative project delivery process. On the recent project, we were able to prefabricate utility racks, mechanical equipment like pumps, tanks, and heat exchanger skids, as well as skylights.
And from a HVAC and plumbing perspective, we went in with the philosophy to fabricate everything possible offsite to maximize site safety, efficiency, and quality. We skidded all the pumps, the water heaters, the heat exchangers, and more. We racked all the plumbing, process waters, gases, heating, hot water, and chill water. And then the majority of the remaining pipe was spooled in our fabrication shop for an efficient install on site. So the racks were pre-insulated in our shop and also designed to support multiple cable trays for the electricians to basically maximize the space that we had available. By maximizing the use of racks, we were able to, it was a huge safety win for the project. The racks were located 30 plus feet in the air. So we were able to remove 90% of the insulation and welding work up at that height. So again, huge safety win for the project.
Yeah, in addition, just the thought process alone, we were able to gain in quality and understanding of installation logistics. So we're able to review the prefabricated skids in TG Gallagher's warehouse, where it's a safer environment again, and find things that might have caused significant rework when it was in the field later in a tighter space with multiple trades. Again, just emphasizing the safety aspect of the culture of what we were trying to do. For the racks, we learned from electrical partner as well as how the client wanted to work, where to put the electrical within the racks, because where we thought would be the best case scenario for where they wanted to use them actually didn't end up being the case, and it completely changed our thinking even from the design standpoint.
And as I alluded to earlier, in addition to the many MEP systems that we had the opportunity to fabricate, we also prefabricated the skylights. So as we were planning the work and procuring the trades, we were having a lot of conversations about how we were going to take care of fall protection at the skylight openings and how we were going to perform all the maintenance that would be required of that protection. So through conversations with the design team and our trade partners, we were able to come up with a way to prefabricate the skylights as a complete unit on site, but not on the roof. So the steel frames were shipped to site from the structural steel fabricator. From there, the carpenter came and installed the wood blocking. Then the roofer came in next, installed the flashing, the prefabricated curbs, the safety grills, the roofing membrane, and then finally the dome tops. Then we flew the completed assemblies to the roof and dropped the skylights in place. So if you think about it, that's a minimum of 3 trades at 86 locations that didn't have to do the work on a roof and didn't have to do each of the work around an opening with a fall to 40 feet below. So that's literally hundreds of fall exposures that were mitigated. And that's a huge safety risk on a construction site.
Wow, that's a lot of at risk falls that were mitigated due to this approach. So thank you so much for that overview. This example is a little different from the previous examples we've discussed today because of how many trades were involved in the prefabrication approach. Can you talk a little bit more about the unique challenges that multi-trade prefabrication poses and how you can overcome them to realize its full benefits?
Sure. I mean, I know some of the people on this call are from union markets, as is Boston. So in the Boston market, there's strong involvement from building trades. So it's really important to consider a project labor agreement or a PLA. With this, the scope of the PLA needs to be confirmed. So the warehouse fabrication, the truck drivers, on-site installation, and the required union trades and jurisdictional rules need to be clearly defined so the work can be properly assigned. From there, it's also really important to identify the warehouse location and where the staging is going to be. You want to think about the proximity of the job site and how long it will take to, deliver things to the site, reducing truck time. The size of the warehouse, clear height for any vertical construction that you're doing for prefabrication. crane and rigging access, loading docks, secure laydown, so all of those types of things. And then for the warehouse space, you need to consider zoning and certificate of occupancy for the intended use. So you need to coordinate inspections with the city inspectional services department and the fire department for the occupancy classification, egress, fire protection, and even like hazardous material storage. We've also learned it's really critical to assign a logistics coordinator. So that would be like a single point of contact to manage the warehouse, unions, permits, and delivery windows.
Yeah, thanks, Carolyn. So, when working with those multiple trades, how you manage that labor agreement and site logistics can be the difference in effective prefabrication strategy. So I appreciate you going over that. Can you all go into a little bit more detail about the prefabrication approach for the racks and piping? What was the timing on that, and how did it help optimize the project schedule?
Sure. I mean, from a design side, like we're always trying to get more data to help us inform the right sizing of things. But when you have the partners on board, you're going to start asking yourself and understand the slight cost of buying a little bit more pipe size or implications of the space versus waiting too long in final design. That can be the linchpin for maximizing the effect of prefab. Our project, we got to a point where the difference between a 4-inch or a 6-inch pipe was not worth the wait time, for example. It also just happened to mean they have more adaptability in terms of where they can use that service in the future, something long-term clients are always asking for. So with that in mind, we could show we had enough capacity and also the need to allow for adaptability. Brian can talk a little bit about the saved effort side of those things that we leave for the field labor and efficiency with the higher safety.
Again, like everyone else has kind of said, to maximize prefab, we need to be brought in early. By influencing the design, we can optimize what can be built offsite and how it's achieved. The team went into the design with the idea of racking as much pipe as possible from the get-go. We worked with the whole team, Skanska, BR+A, the electricians, the structural engineer, the owner, the architect, to find the best approach in routing for the racks. We looked at the look of the space and the impact of the racks on the structure were actually just as important as the function of the rack. The actual rack designs were modeled and then placed into the actual BIM model of the project. So the architect was able to put together views for the owner to make a visual representation of how the rack will look from key spaces in the building. With that, it drove a major decision to raise the roof of the building to optimize the aesthetics inside the space. So with that, we focused on the primary racks to make sure we were delivering services throughout the manufacturing floor for future expansion, flexibility down the road. And then we focused on the secondary racks to provide the individual pieces of equipment that would be going in day 1, day 2, and so on. We utilized a product with mechanical fasteners instead of doing a traditional welded rack to allow for flexibility down the road. The facility does have, it's an aerosol facility that does have, flammable gases being used in manufacturing. So hot works are a last resort once the production is up and running. So we wanted something that was going to be flexible down the road and didn't require welding after the fact. With regards to multi-trade, we are a union shop, so any of the trades that we bring in to do work on any of our skids or racks are all union as well. So typically we will bring the electrician, the insulators, other trades from the job site, but if not, we are utilizing union labor so that there is no issue when the racks come to site and they were built by other union contractors.
Great, thank you. So again, hearing that theme of early engagement and coordination, as we've heard earlier today, how do customers replicate this type of approach on their projects? Is there a specific contract type that helps realize these benefits? I think we just got a question in the chat about bid projects, hard bid projects where you might not be able to bring somebody on early. And then there's also been some concern about, specifying material and equipment that's then no longer available as we actually go to, award the job. So what do customers do if they can't use a collaborative delivery model? Can they still bring on these partners and have them work together to realize similar results? Or how can we kind of approach this maybe with not the most optimal delivery method?
Sure, yeah, I think I can answer that question and the chat. Really, it's about asking the what if questions of each partner, right? And being willing to ask the question, understand the why on both parties. For example, what if you flip the mechanical room location to allow for easier, safer rigging pathways in and out of the site? One quick, easy thing might save a month of construction and logistics or be a safer site. What the conversation does is it releases all of us for a broader understanding of value that can be delivered. So we get to understand all the risk and all the potential opportunities. The contract delivery type, whether it's design, bid, build, or an integrated project delivery like IPD, it can often be dictated by the market, and the market in that case then dictates how our trade partners are going to compete for business. I actually think that everyone in all the markets wants to operate the way that we were able to, in order to do things and embrace the knowledge of each other, because that's why we had to deliver design, estimates, schedule without ever being properly aligning on what is best overall is kind of, it puts us all in a tough spot. It's almost like we're against each other. Design bid build, sorry, can in fact embrace prefab. Like our own internal standards have shifted how we do our BIM protocols to really embrace what we've heard from partners and learn how to design with the intent that they're going to try to prefabricate everything. So timing becomes a key strategy for sure, but it's all something we've done in our firm already. So.
Yeah, I think, any approach, whether design build, IPD, design assist, design bid build, I think the biggest benefit is just trying to bring the design team and the construction team together again as early as possible. But allowing the trade partners to optimize prefab as the design's progressing, look at constructability like others have said today, and start the coordination process while the engineers are still doing their engineering. They're focusing on, making sure that, capacities are being able to be reached and whatnot, while the trade partners can be focusing on actually making things fit. This project that we worked on was unique for this market. It was an IPD, which we rarely see in New England. So all the partners kind of had skin in the game, and all partners wanted success for the other trade partners, because, if one wins, they all win. We all won. So it really helped push the best athletes of the team to kind of take the driver's seat for the different roles.
And I would say it just really comes down to culture and being extremely intentional about partner selection. You're looking for a team that operates in a manner that will optimize the talents of all parties, and that's relentless in their collaboration. People that work transparently and that can trust one another. At its core, it's a culture that derives value from respect for people. And then from there, the safety, innovation, quality, reduction of waste, efficiency can flourish. And that's why prefabrication makes so much sense, because it's a process that just checks all of those boxes.
Thank you all. It's really great to hear about that early collaboration, and then just interesting to hear how it can still be applied with different delivery methods. So appreciate that. And we've really heard that echo throughout everybody today about early engagement. So it seems like that is really the kind of differentiator. Carolyn, we did have a question regarding PLA in the chat. So what is the threshold for considering a PLA? Is it project duration, GMP, or some other delta that makes a PLA worthwhile? Do you have any insight into that?
I don't know that it's necessarily any of those things. I think more than anything, it's the market and the demand, and working with the client to make sure it makes sense for them.
Okay, great. Let's see. I don't know. I think let's see, is there any other? Yeah, I don't think there's any other questions in the chat. And as I was mentioning, just, we're trying to take them on the way. We do have a few minutes, so if anybody has any questions, please add them in. But if we can also follow up with you directly. So I just want to thank you to Carolyn, Brian, and Josh, and all our panelists today. So we really appreciate you sharing all the insight with us today. And thank you for all those who joined us, and make sure you check out Skanska's quarterly market trends report and the link in the chat. So with that, if we don't have any, unless there's any other questions coming in, I think that might be it. So thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.